The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered for the emergency session. Ambassador Zextheri of the Altarian Confederacy raised his crystalline hand, calling for order among the assembled delegates. "The situation has escalated beyond our worst projections," Zextheri announced, his voice resonating through the translation matrices. "The Vorthack Dominion has conquered 17 more systems in the past lunar cycle. Their war fleets show no signs of slowing." A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The Vorthack were a nightmare made real, a species that had evolved from apex predators on a death world where survival meant consuming everything in your path. Their massive ships, bristling with plasma weaponry and protected by energy shields that could deflect small moons, had swept through the Outer Rim territories like a plague. Fleet Admiral Corthana of the Hegemony Defense Force stood, her 6 arms gesturing to the holographic display that materialized above the assembly. Red markers indicated fallen worlds, each one representing billions of lives lost or enslaved. "Our combined fleets have engaged them 14 times. We have achieved exactly 0 victories. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, and their tactics." She paused, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Their tactics are unlike anything we've encountered. They fight like they have nothing to lose," added Commander Veltash from the Outer Colonies. "Our battle analysis shows they deliberately rammed damaged ships into our formations. They use their own vessels as weapons when conventional armaments fail." The chamber filled with the sounds of distressed chittering, low groans, and the equivalent of worried murmurs from dozens of different species. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through diplomacy, trade agreements, and the occasional show of force. The Vorthack cared nothing for such civilized approaches. "What are the ancient defense protocols?" asked a delegate from the rear of the chamber. "Surely our ancestors faced threats of this magnitude." Zextheri's expression darkened. "We have consulted the archive masters. There are references to a warrior species that once served as guardians of this galaxy. But these records are fragmented, incomplete. Many scholars believe them to be mythology rather than historical fact." An elderly Severian delegate, her blue-scaled hide marked with the scars of age, slowly rose from her position. Archive Keeper Nixera was one of the oldest beings in the known galaxy, her species blessed with lifespans that stretched across millennia. When she spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. "I remember the stories my grandfather told me," Nixera said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Stories his grandfather told him, passed down through our oral traditions long before we developed spaceflight. There was a species called humans, warriors who could endure impossible hardships, who fought not just for victory, but for principles we barely understood. Humans? Zextheri's tone carried barely concealed skepticism. "Archive Keeper, with respect, our historians have found no evidence of such a species in any verified records." "Because they didn't keep records the way we do," Nixera replied. "They kept their history in stories, in songs, in memories passed from parent to child. The legends say they came from a world so harsh that every other species that visited it declared it uninhabitable. A world of extreme weather, natural disasters, and predators that would terrify even the Vorthack." "Even if such a species existed," Fleet Admiral Corthana interjected, "where are they now? If they were such mighty warriors, why haven't we encountered them?" "The stories say they left," Nixera continued, her ancient eyes reflecting memories of tales told long ago. "They grew beyond the need for constant warfare. They explored the deepest parts of space, seeking knowledge and new challenges. Some say they transcended physical existence entirely. Others believe they simply found a place where they could live in peace." A junior aide to the Altarian delegation whispered urgently in Zextheri's ear. The ambassador's expression shifted from skepticism to shock. "Archive Keeper," Zextheri said slowly, "our deep space monitoring stations have detected something unprecedented. A fleet of unknown design has appeared at the edge of the Vortex-occupied Kepler system. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The holographic display shifted, showing long-range sensor readings from the outer rim. 12 ships hung in the void, their design utterly alien to anything the Council had ever seen. They were smaller than the massive Vortex dreadnoughts, built with clean lines and what appear to be efficient, purposeful engineering rather than the intimidating spikes and aggressive angles favored by most war fleets. They're transmitting something, the aide reported. It's not in any known galactic language, but our linguistic computers are working on a translation. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then a voice filled the chamber, clear, confident, and speaking in perfect galactic standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Federation vessel Endeavor. We've received your distress signals. We're here to help." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Zextheri stammered into his communication device. "Unknown vessel, please identify your species and authorization for intervention in Council space." "We are human," came the reply, "and we don't need authorization to defend innocent people." Archive Keeper Nick Sarah's ancient face broke into what might have been a smile. "The warriors have returned," she whispered. On the display, the 12 human ships moved with a grace that defied their obviously military design. They approached the Vortex fleet that had been systematically destroying the orbital defenses around Kepler Prime, a manufacturing world housing nearly 8 billion civilians. "Vortex Command Vessel," Captain Chen's voice broadcast on all frequencies, "you are engaged in the systematic slaughter of non-combatants. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response from the Vortex was swift and predictable. 3 of their largest ships turned toward the human fleet, weapons charging for what should have been an overwhelming first strike. What happened next changed everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about space warfare. The lead human ship, Endeavor, didn't attempt to dodge the incoming plasma barrage. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the Vortex formation. At the last possible moment, the human vessel performed a maneuver that should have been impossible, a combination of roll, pitch, and directional thrust that brought its weapons to bear on all 3 enemy ships simultaneously. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Council's databases. Instead of the energy beams or plasma charges favored by galactic militaries, they fired solid projectiles at velocities approaching a significant percentage of light speed. The projectiles themselves seemed almost primitive until they struck their targets. The first Vortex ship's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against the kinetic bombardment. The projectiles punched through the shield matrix and into the hull, where they exploded with the force of small nuclear weapons. But it wasn't just the weapons that shocked the observers. It was how the humans fought. The remaining 11 ships moved in perfect coordination, not like individual vessels, but like parts of a single organism. They used the wreckage of the first Vortex ship as cover, bouncing their projectiles off debris to strike enemy vessels from impossible angles. They performed maneuvers that would have liquefied the crew of any other species, pulling gravitational forces that should have been lethal. How are their crews surviving those accelerations? Fleet Admiral Corthana asked in amazement. As if hearing her question, Captain Chen's voice came through the communication channel. "All ships go to enhanced combat protocols. Full augmentation authorized." The human ships suddenly moved even faster, their maneuvers becoming even more impossible. They fought with a combination of tactical precision and apparently reckless aggression that made no sense to conventional military doctrine. A damaged Vortex vessel attempted to ram one of the human ships in the desperate gesture that had proven effective against Council fleets. The human ship didn't try to evade. Instead, it flew directly into the collision course and, at the moment of impact, somehow transferred its momentum to send the Vortex ship spinning helplessly into its own allies. "They're using physics itself as a weapon," someone whispered in the Council chamber. The battle was over in 17 minutes. 12 human ships had destroyed or disabled a Vorthack fleet that should have been able to eliminate them without sustaining a single loss. As the last Vorthack vessel fled the system, Captain Chen's voice again filled the council chamber. This is Captain Chen to any Galactic Council representatives monitoring this engagement. We need to talk. Archive Keeper Nixera leaned back in her chair, her ancient eyes bright with an emotion that might have been hope. The legends spoke truth, she said softly. The humans fight not just with weapons, but with something far more dangerous. What's that? Zextheri asked. They fight with the absolute certainty that some things are worth dying for, she replied, and that terrifies anyone who fights only for conquest. The display showed the 12 human ships maintaining position around Kepler Prime, their simple presence somehow transforming the system from a place of certain doom to one of safety. For the first time since the Vorthack invasion began, the Galactic Council allowed itself to hope that the tide of war might be turning. But none of them yet understood what they had truly witnessed. The battle at Kepler Prime was not a demonstration of superior technology or numbers. It was something far more fundamental, a glimpse of what happened when a species that had evolved to survive impossible odds decided that survival was not enough. The legends had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The meeting took place aboard the human flagship Endeavor, in what the humans called their conference room. Ambassador Zextheri found the space unsettling in its simplicity. Where council vessels were decorated with artistic displays representing the cultural achievements of their species, the human ship was purely functional. The walls were lined with displays showing tactical information, star charts, and what appeared to be real-time feeds from dozens of other locations. Captain Sarah Chun was younger than Zextheri had expected, though he realized he had no reference point for human aging. Her skin was the color of rich soil, her dark hair pulled back in a severe style that suggested military discipline. But it was her eyes that made the ambassador uncomfortable. They held an intensity that reminded him of hunting predators from his homeworld. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Zextheri began, settling into a chair that had been hastily modified for his crystalline physiology. "Though I must admit, we're somewhat confused about your arrival. Our deep space sensors detected no ships approaching Council space until you appeared at Kepler." "That's because we've been here for 3 months," Captain Chun replied matter-of-factly. "We've been observing, gathering intelligence, try to understand the scope of the threat." Fleet Admiral Corthena's mandibles clicked in agitation. 3 months? That's impossible. Our sensor networks would have detected any ships of your size. "Your sensor networks are designed to detect the kind of ships you build," said another human who had introduced herself as Commander Maria Vasquez. "Ships that broadcast their presence, that use energy sources you recognize. We build our vessels differently." "How differently?" the Admiral asked. "Show her, Elena," Captain Chin said. A third human, whose pale skin and white hair suggested a different genetic background than her companions, touched a control surface. The room's windows shifted from opaque to transparent, revealing the space around them. Where the Galactic Council delegates expected to see 12 ships, they saw dozens. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Massive carriers that had somehow escaped detection despite being larger than most Council space stations. And, strangest of all, ships that appear to be nothing more than asteroids until closer inspection revealed sophisticated weapon emplacements and propulsion systems. "Stealth technology," Zextheri breathed. "But our scientists proved decades ago that true stealth in space was impossible. The energy requirements alone are manageable when you don't think about the problem the same way." Captain Chen interrupted. "You try to hide your ships by masking their energy signatures. We built ours to look like natural phenomena. Solar wind, cosmic radiation, the background temperature of space itself. All things your sensors are programmed to ignore." Commander Vasquez leaned forward her chair. "We've been watching your war with the Vorthack. We've analyzed their tactics, their technology, their psychological profiles. We know how they think, how they fight, and, most importantly, how they can be defeated. And You waited 3 months to intervene. Fleet Admiral Corthana's voice carried clear accusation. Billions have died while you observed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Captain Chin's expression didn't change, but something in her posture suggested barely contained anger. Admiral, we spent those 3 months saving lives you didn't even know were in danger, she said quietly. While you were fighting conventional battles and losing, we were evacuating civilian populations from 17 worlds before the Vorthack arrived. We've been conducting rescue operations in systems you'd written off as lost, and we've been preparing for a war that your people couldn't win. The human called Elena activated another display. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with red markers indicating Vorthack-controlled space, blue for Council territories, and green for human operations. In the past 3 months, we've evacuated 4 billion civilians, Elena reported. We've destroyed 18 Vorthack supply convoys, eliminated 3 of their forward reconnaissance bases, and captured enough of their technology to understand their capabilities, all without them knowing we exist. How is that possible? Zextheri asked. Because we don't fight the way you do, Captain Chin replied. You treat space warfare like an extension of planetary surface combat. Large formations, direct confrontation, honorable engagement rules. The Vorthack fight like predators. They go for the throat and don't stop until their prey is dead. But humans, she paused, seeming to consider her words carefully. We learned to fight like prey that became predators. Commander Vasquez took up the explanation. Our homeworld, Earth, was not kind to us. We evolved alongside creatures that were stronger, faster, and more naturally armed than we were. We survived by being smarter, by cooperating, by using tools and tactics that turn our weaknesses into advantages. We learned to hunt pack hunters. We learned to kill creatures that should have been able to kill us easily. The Vorthack are apex predators from their world, Captain Chun continued. But they've never faced prey that hunts back. They're used to their victims running, hiding, or fighting according to predictable patterns. We don't do any of those things. Fleet Admiral Corthana studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. These rescue operations, you extracted millions of people from behind enemy lines without the Vorthack noticing? They noticed, Elena said with what might have been amusement. They just couldn't figure out what they were noticing. Missing patrols, supply ships that arrived empty, colonies that were evacuated but showed no signs of battle. From their perspective, people were just disappearing. Show them the Rigel operation, Captain Chin said. The display shifted to show a detailed recording of what appeared to be a massive space battle. Vorthack ships were attacking a Council colony world, their usual pattern of overwhelming force against desperate defenders. But as the delegates watched, strange things began happening. Vorthack ships would suddenly veer off course, their crews apparently dead. Supply vessels exploded with no visible cause. Command ships lost communication with their fleets at crucial moments. What should have been a simple conquest turned into a chaotic disaster for the attackers. Small teams, Commander Vasquez explained. 4-person infiltration units using suits that mimic cosmic background radiation. They board Vorthack ships during combat, disable critical systems, eliminate command personnel, then disappear before anyone realizes what happened. You boarded enemy ships during active combat. Fleet Admiral Corthana asked in disbelief. It's easier than you'd think, Captain Chin replied. The Vorthack focus all their attention on the targets in front of them. They never expect attack from behind, especially not from inside their own ships. Zextheri was struggling to process what he was seeing. But the risks if you were discovered. Risk is relative, Elena said. For you, the risk of discovery means military embarrassment, political consequences, maybe court-martial. For us, failure means the extinction of innocent civilizations. The choice becomes simple. This is why we wanted to meet with you, Captain Chin said, her tone becoming more formal. The Vorthack aren't just raiders or conquerors. Our intelligence indicates they're part of something larger. They're scouting forces for what they call the Great Consumption, a galaxy-wide harvesting operation. The council delegates exchanged worried glances. Harvesting? Zextheri asked. Commander Vasquez activated another display, this one showing Vorthack communications intercepts. They don't just conquer worlds, they strip them completely. Every resource, every piece of technology, every living being gets processed and consumed. Then, they move to the next target. According to their projections, they plan to consume this entire spiral arm within 50 standard years. Can they be reasoned with? Negotiated with? Fleet Admiral Corthana asked desperately. No, Captain Chin said flatly. We tried. 3 of our diplomatic ships approached them under truce flags 6 months ago. The Vorthack didn't just destroy the ships, they broadcast recordings of our diplomats being eaten alive as a warning to other species. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Finally, Zextheri spoke. What do you propose? Total war, Captain Chin replied without hesitation. Not the limited engagements you've been fighting. Not the defensive actions that let them choose when and where to attack. We hunt them down, destroy their infrastructure, eliminate their leadership, and make them understand that this galaxy is defended. The Council has rules about warfare, Fleet Admiral Corthana protested. Laws governing the treatment of prisoners, restrictions on weapon types, protocols for civilian protection. Your rules assume your enemy shares your values, Commander Vasquez interrupted. The Vorthack don't take prisoners, they take livestock. They don't distinguish between civilians and military. They see only food sources. They don't honor agreements. They honor only strength. Captain Chin leaned forward, her intense gaze meeting each delegate in turn. We're offering you a choice. You can continue fighting this war your way by your rules and watch every civilization in this galaxy get consumed. Or you can let us fight it our way. And what exactly is your way? Zextheri asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. We're going to make them afraid, Elena said simply. For the first time in their species' history, the Vorthack are going to know what it feels like to be prey. The displays around the room shifted again, showing new tactical projections. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed almost organic, flowing around Vorthack positions like water around rocks. But this water carried within it the promise of storms that could wash away mountains. We've identified 17 critical Vorthack installations, Captain Chun continued. Supply depots, communication relays, breeding facilities, command centers. We're going to hit all of them simultaneously, then disappear before they can respond. When they send reinforcements, we'll hit those too. When they try to regroup, we'll be waiting. You're talking about guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale, Fleet Admiral Corthana said with growing understanding. We're talking about survival, Commander Vasquez corrected. The only kind of warfare that matters when extinction is the alternative. Captain Chun stood, her movement somehow conveying both dismissal and invitation. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we begin operations with or without council support. But understand this, if you choose to join us, there's no going back to the old way of thinking. This war won't be won by honor or tradition. It will be won by those willing to do whatever it takes to protect the innocent. As the council delegates prepared to leave, archive keeper Nick Sarah's voice came through the communication system. She had remained aboard the council vessel, but her ancient wisdom carried clearly across the void. Captain Chun, she said, my grandfather's grandfather told stories of humans. He said they were the only species that could make war itself afraid. I thought they were just stories. They were never just stories, Keeper, Captain Chun replied. They were promises, and we always keep our promises. The meeting ended, but as the delegates returned to their own ships, each carried with them the same unsettling realization. The humans weren't offering to help fight the war. They were offering to teach the galaxy what war really meant. And somewhere in the depths of space, Vorthack Command was beginning to notice that their perfect conquest was developing very imperfect problems. The Vorthack High Command Fortress at Drexel Prime was considered impregnable. Carved into the core of a dead planet, and protected by overlapping shield generators that could deflect stellar radiation, it served as the nerve center for the entire invasion fleet. Supreme War Leader Gorthay K had chosen this location specifically because it was impossible to attack conventionally. Any assault force would have to navigate through 3 defensive perimeters, each capable of destroying entire battle fleets. None of that mattered to the humans. Captain Sarek Chun materialized in Gorthay K's private chamber like a ghost made flesh. One moment, the war leader was studying tactical displays showing the continued expansion of Vorthak territory. The next, a small figure in form-fitting black armor stood behind his command throne. "Surprise," she said conversationally. Gorthay K spun with the lightning reflexes that had made him the most feared warrior in the Dominion. His massive claws, each one capable of rending through steel plating, swept toward the intruder in an arc that should have bisected her at the waist. Captain Chen wasn't there anymore. The human woman had moved with impossible speed, flowing under his attack, and somehow ending up beside his communication console. Her hand rested casually on the emergency alert trigger, the one that would bring the entire fortress guard running. "I wouldn't recommend that," she said, nodding toward his reaching claw. "We need to talk, and I prefer to do it without interruptions." Gorthay K's 6 eyes focused on her with predatory intensity. At 3 meters tall and massing nearly 400 kilograms of bone, muscle, and natural armor, he had never encountered anything that didn't flee from his presence. This small creature showed no fear whatsoever. "You are the one called human," he growled, his voice carrying harmonics that could shatter glass. "I had heard the legends. Disappointing to see reality is so small." "Size isn't everything," Captain Chen replied, removing her helmet to reveal features that seemed almost delicate compared to the war leader's massive skull. "Though I understand why your species would think so. When you've evolved to be the biggest, strongest thing on your world, it's hard to imagine any other approach to problem solving. You have made a fatal mistake, little creature," Gorthay said, his battle claws extending fully. "You have entered the stronghold of Gorthay the Render, slayer of 10,000, conqueror of worlds. Your death will be legendary." "Actually," Captain Chen said, checking something on her wrist display, "according to my information, your Gorthay is the soon-to-be former Supreme War Leader. Impressive title, but it lacks a certain ring." The massive Vorthak warrior lunged with speed that would have been impossible for most species to follow. Captain Chen stepped aside with an economy of movement that made the attack look clumsy by comparison. As Gorthay K crashed into his own command console, she continued speaking as if nothing had happened. "You see, while we've been having this conversation, teams of my people have been systematically dismantling your entire operation. The shield generators protecting this fortress? Offline as of 30 seconds ago. Your communication arrays? Currently broadcasting a very interesting message to every Vorthak ship in this sector. Would you like to know what it says?" Gorthay roared and attacked again, this time with the fury of a creature that had never been denied anything it wanted to kill. Captain Chun moved like liquid shadow, staying just out of reach while her opponent destroyed his own chamber in increasingly desperate attempts to catch her. "The message says that Supreme War Leader Gorthay has been revealed as a coward and a failure," she continued, ducking under a claw swipe that removed a section of bulkhead. "That he has led the Dominion into a trap, that his supposedly invincible forces are being destroyed by an inferior species, and that any warrior who still follows him is equally weak." "Lies," Gorthay bellowed, but his attacks were becoming wilder, less controlled. For a species that prided itself on predatory excellence, being unable to catch prey was more than frustrating. It was psychologically devastating. "Oh, it gets better," Captain Chen said, finally stopping her evasive movement. She stood perfectly still in the center of the ruined chamber, apparently offering herself as an easy target. The message also includes detailed tactical information about every Vorthak position in this sector. Ship locations, defensive capabilities, supply schedules, command hierarchies. Everything your enemies would need to destroy your forces completely. Gorthake's charge this time carried the full weight of his massive frame, claws extended, jaws wide enough to bite a human in half. At the last possible instant, Captain Shun moved again, not aside this time, but forward, somehow slipping between his attacks to end up directly in front of his chest. What happened next violated everything the Vorthack understood about physical combat. The small human woman delivered a strike to Gorthake's torso that sent 350 kilograms of apex predator flying backward into the reinforced wall hard enough to leave a crater. The thing about humans, Captain Shin said, walking toward the stunned war leader, is that we don't win fights by being bigger or stronger. We win by being smarter, faster, and more desperate than our opponents think possible. Gorthake struggled to rise, his 6 eyes wide with something he had never experienced before, genuine fear. What are you? I'm a product of a world that tried to kill everything on it for 4 billion years, Captain Shin replied, her voice carrying a matter-of-fact tone that somehow made her words more terrifying. I'm descended from persistence hunters who could run their prey to death across continents, from social predators who could coordinate complex strategies across thousands of individuals, from survivors who could adapt to environments that would kill most other species in minutes. She knelt down to bring herself closer to his eye level, though her position suggested she could move instantly if he tried another attack. But, most importantly, I'm a member of a species that learned something your people never did. We learned that the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the biggest claws or the strongest bite. It's the one that can convince other predators to work together. As if summoned by her words, the chamber filled with additional figures. Human soldiers appeared from positions that shouldn't have been able to conceal anyone, their movements so coordinated they seemed like extensions of a single organism. But they weren't alone. Council forces materialized alongside them. Altarian shock troops, hegemony battle specialists, outer colony guerrilla fighters. Species that had fought individual battles against the Vorthack were now working together with a precision that spoke of extensive joint training. You see, Captain Shun continued, while your people were conquering territory, we were forging alliances. Real ones. Not the dominance-based hierarchies your species understands, but partnerships built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Fleet Admiral Corthana stepped forward, her weapons trained on the fallen war leader. The Hegemony Defense Force stands with humanity, she announced formally. Ambassador Zextheri followed. The Altarian Confederacy has voted unanimous support for human tactical command. One by one, representatives of dozens of council species declared their allegiance to the human-led coalition. Species that had spent centuries in petty conflict with each other were united by the simple recognition that some threats required setting aside old grievances. Gorthake's expression shifted from fear to confusion to something approaching respect. You turned them against their own nature, he said wonderingly. Prey species do not coordinate. They compete, they scatter, they abandon the weak to save themselves. Maybe your prey species did, Captain Shin replied. But humans taught them something different. We taught them that cooperation makes everyone stronger, that protecting the weak protects the strong, and that the only way to deal with bullies is to stand together and fight back. The war leader struggled to understand what he was seeing. His entire worldview was based on the principle that strength dominated weakness, that the powerful took what they wanted from the powerless. The idea that the weak could become strong by working together was antithetical to everything the Vorthack believed. Your invasion is over, Captain Shin announced, standing and stepping back from him. Right now, human-led coalition forces are hitting every Vorthack position in this galaxy simultaneously. Your supply lines are cut, your communication network is compromised, and your fleet commanders are receiving orders that will lead them into carefully prepared traps. But you could have simply destroyed us, Gorthake said, his voice carrying genuine puzzlement. Your weapons, your tactics, You could have eliminated every Vorthack in this galaxy without revealing yourselves. Why show yourselves at all? Because extinction was never the goal, Captain Shin replied. We're not interested in genocide. We're interested in peace. She gestured to her communications officer, who activated a holographic display showing the current tactical situation across Vorthack space. Red indicators marked Dominion forces, but they were rapidly being surrounded by blue markers representing coalition fleets. Your forces aren't being destroyed, she explained. They're being contained, isolated, cut off from supplies and reinforcements. We're giving them a choice: surrender and live as prisoners of war, or continue fighting and die as warriors. Most are choosing to surrender. Impossible, Gortak Breathet. The Vorthack do not surrender. It is not in our nature. It is when the alternative is meaningless death, Fleet Admiral Corthana observed. Your warriors are discovering that there's no honor in dying for a cause that has already been lost. Captain Shin activated her personal communicator. All coalition forces, this is actual. Phase 3 is complete. Begin humanitarian operations immediately. The display shifted to show something unprecedented in Vorthack history. Human medical ships moving toward damaged Dominion vessels, offering aid to their enemies. Surrender protocols that respected Vorthack cultural concepts of honor, while ensuring they could no longer threaten innocent civilians. You're healing our wounded, Gorthake said in amazement, offering medical treatment to your enemies. That's what civilized species do, Captain Shin replied. The war is over. Now comes the harder part, building a peace that works for everyone. She moved toward the chamber's exit, then paused to look back at the fallen war leader. Your people have a choice, Gorthake. You can continue believing that strength comes from domination, that survival requires the destruction of everyone else. Or you can learn what humans learned long ago, that real strength comes from protecting those who can't protect themselves. And if we choose poorly, Captain Shin's expression became very serious. Then, you'll discover that humans can be far more dangerous as enemies than we ever were as friends. We gave you the easy way out. Don't make us show you the hard way. As the coalition forces withdrew from the fortress, Gorthake was left alone with a communication device and a simple message. The location in a neutral world where Vorthack representatives could negotiate surrender terms with the Combined Council and human leadership. For the first time in his species' violent history, a Vorthack war leader faced a choice between conquest and coexistence. The legends had proven true, but they had also proven to be something more than just stories of warrior prowess. They were stories about a species that had learned to turn enemies into allies, that fought not for glory or dominance, but for the radical idea that everyone deserved a chance to live in peace. The age of human legends was over. The age of human reality had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.